welcome to the Creating and Adapting 4-H for Virtual and Hybrid Delivery video. My name is Dr. Emma Fett. I am the 4-H Program Academic Advisor for San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties. This video is specifically for the community club leaders who are trying to figure out how to approach the 2020 to 2021 4-H program year. This presentation has been adapted from a slide deck that was provided by the Virginia Cooperative Extension at a National 4-H meeting of staff. So it will be made available both in this video format and as a PDF for download if you are interested. It will be available on the county website. So the goals of this video, again, focused on community club leaders. I will be talking about the terminology, the concepts, the topics that are all related to virtual and hybrid learning. I'm doing that mainly so that if you guys are interested in learning more and want to do some research on your own, you'll know what the terminology is to go and do some Googling of your own. These are all concepts based in education, research, and of course 4-H is an educational program, so there's a lot of great resources that are out there. We'll talk about the 4-H ones which we're making available to you, but if you'd like to find more, you'll know how. Obviously, another segment of this is to provide an update on what is the current COVID-19 situation. We'll explore different types of delivery modes and discuss how to decide when to use them and what will be the most effective option. But if you want really specific ideas for how to move forward, we will be providing options for you to get more help. We'll run through some of the tools and technology very briefly, but provide you those websites available both in this video description and in the email that you received from the county. So what are the current restrictions due to COVID-19? Well, first of all, this video is being recorded in September of 2020. So of course, if you want to keep up to date, make sure and go check out the county website for the most current status. It'll be made available right at the very top of the homepage. So that'll provide you with the most recent information. But as of today, we are looking at absolutely no in-person meetings indoors of any kind. There is an allowance for outdoor in-person meetings, but only with up to 10 people. And remember that we do require the 2 deep rule, meaning 2 adults are always required to be together if there are kids. So that's 2 adults and 8 kids as your maximum. Parents and siblings and whoever else, they're not allowed to hang around. They cannot be in that same space. There are creative options that are still possible. Drive-in meetings, trunk or treat activities, drive-in ice cream socials. As long as they are following the social distancing, basically requiring people to be in their own space, in their vehicle, where they're really not coming into contact with anybody else, there are options. However, any and all in-person meetings of any kind need to be approved by the 4-H office. So every single in-person option that you guys are thinking about, you need to go ahead and fill out the paperwork, get it all approved by the office. We suggest at least 14 days in advance to make sure that everything's set and ready to go. There again will be a link for the paperwork that you need to do, the approval that you need to get. And just as a reminder, if you have an in-person meeting that has not been approved by the office, it will be considered a violation of both 4-H policy and the Volunteer Code of Conduct and could put you at in the danger of being dismissed as a volunteer for those violations. So really take this seriously and please fill out the paperwork. The other question that I get a bunch is, when will things go back to normal? Unfortunately, we just don't know. There are a lot of things that are influencing the situation. We have county infection rates, the UC Regents policies, risk and insurance, etc., etc. So my recommendation to you, if you want to make the safest bet possible, plan for a virtual and hybrid year. It's probably not the answer you'd like to hear, but it's a heck of a lot easier to take a step back and open less restrictions than it is to attempt or hope that things will open up at a certain time and then they don't. So definitely planning ahead is your best bet. So let's go ahead and start talking about the important terminology when we're talking about virtual learning. There's a whole bunch of educational babble, but the important part that you guys need to know when we're talking about virtual or distance or remote learning, we're talking about delivery of our programming without being face-to-face. So not face-to-face in this case. That's what we're talking about. There are two terms that are really important that will be brought up over and over and over again. And this is synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous means everybody doing it at the same time. Asynchronous means everybody doing it on their own time. So same time, not the same time. A easy way to think of it is, what do we do together? What are we doing apart? And that'll be both the synchronous and asynchronous, the together and apart will be terminology that I'll use throughout this video. And again, you'll see throughout your own Google searches. Hybrid learning is probably going to be the most common way that we are utilizing our technology. Hybrid learning means we're using both synchronous options and asynchronous options. A really good example is called the flipped classroom model. This means that the kids are going to do the reading, they're going to watch videos, they're going to do the activities before our meetings, before our lessons. And then the meeting time is really for discussion, deeper dives into the content, showing off the completion of their activities. Flipped Classroom is really embracing the experiential learning that 4-H, of course, champions. So always going to be my recommendation to you. Try to figure out how to embrace the Flipped Classroom model. Blended learning is another term that is often used. This one is probably not going to be something that we use that much of. Blended learning means using technology to enhance synchronous learning. So everybody's together and they use a piece of technology while they're together in order to do an extra activity. If you're in a Zoom meeting and you take a poll, that's a good example of blended learning, using outside technology to enhance things that you're already doing together. So by and large, we're mostly talking about hybrid learning when we're looking at ways to do virtual learning in 4-H. So you're probably thinking to yourself, all right, when do I use what? Well, just as you would consider for face-to-face delivery, it's really important to consider some questions. Who is your audience? A meeting that's going to include 10 clovers is a lot different than a meeting that'll include 10 teens. The size of your audience, a meeting with 10 people is different than a meeting with 100. What do you guys want to accomplish? Is it a project-based activity or is it a business-based activity? Club meetings are very different than project meetings. What limitations does my group have? I know a lot of people have expressed some concerns with rural members of their clubs who don't have reliable internet. Certainly, if you're looking at clovers, a limitation is going to be attention. You also want to think about how often is the program going to occur? Is this something that we need to worry about once a month, once a week? What are the best ways to move forward with this particular version of our meetings? And of course, anything else that you might need to consider. A good example of this, animal projects. Most animal projects have already stated that they're going to have some sort of in-person element because the kids have to have some supervised time working with the animals. And if you want to make sure that that happens, you also want to pay attention to ways to utilize other elements of delivery, the virtual options, to complement what you're doing at some in-person meeting. So let's think through some examples together. If we're looking at ways to utilize program delivery modes, we really kind of run into four pretty common ideas. The first is a web-based or online program. This is pretty much what everybody immediately thinks of, utilizing Zoom or some other option in order to provide the 4-H experience. This requires an internet connection and is actually sort of the largest, most burdensome option, even if we're utilizing web-based learning environments like Google Classroom. So while it can be a reasonable answer, it's probably not actually the best one for most things here. Another option is social media-based delivery. Utilizing social media, especially if you're looking at communication between officer teams, for example, really maximizing the participation. Or if you want to bring in some new people or offer full group opportunities, social media can be a really great way to do that. However, again, requires at least phone service using data, and of course requires that you have a social media account. So as the kids get younger, that gets less common, and there are all the concerns regarding social media and whether or not some people actually opt out of that. So that's considerations that you'll want to take. Learning kits or project completion at a distance. These are really great opportunities if you don't have reliable internet with a lot of your members. Creating little kits, and the clubs can pick them up, the projects can pick them up, the families can pick them up, and participate in the activity on their own time. Maybe you have a Zoom meeting where everybody shows off their completed activity. It's also a great way if your club provides funding for projects and you want to be able to make sure that that funding still happens. The learning kits are a really great way to provide that. And finally, self-paced learning is another option. So this is actually really great if you and your project are going to utilize some of the curriculum, the National 4-H curriculum that's all available on shop4h.org, or of course some of the state curriculum that we have available at the county office. If the youth get these, they can basically complete them in their own time. This does not require an internet connection and can be a really good option actually for project leaders who can't provide intensive support, or for older 4-H members who are able to work effectively through on their own and essentially just have the option to check in with project leaders. So just to go over some of the technology tools that are available when we're talking about meeting platforms, Zoom is the one that everybody thinks of. Google Meet is another option. Microsoft Teams is very common. Educational learning tools, we're really talking about technological versions of traditional learning tools. So flashcards and quizzes, and I know Kahoot is the one that most of the youth are really familiar with. It's a trivia version of quizzes. So those are all available to enhance things that you're doing if you're doing web-based programming. The organizational and connection platforms, Google Classroom is the one that probably most of you are familiar with. Microsoft Teams and Slack are two of the others. These are essentially depots for communicating with each other. There's usually a chat channel. There's almost always a shared drive. And then, the opportunity to do video calls even for a lot of these. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop where people can just log in either for officer teams or projects, these are really good options. And of course, we can use social media. This is really, like I said, if you're thinking about social media, the Facebook Live is a good option if you want to do a sort of optional project. And have both your members and possibly even the public participate. But otherwise, really, they're great for connecting people. So Snapchat tends to be the one that we have a lot of our officers, especially, probably have Snapchat accounts, and then group chats on Snapchat where they communicate outside of the meetings themselves. So TikTok can be fun if you want to assign a quick video for them to come up with. Those are great opportunities as well. If we're looking at learning apps, thinking about Tumblr, there's the opportunity both to read posts and to create posts. YouTube and YouTube Kids and Vimeo are all video-based, and of course Pinterest for sharing ideas. So these are all tools that are out there that we can certainly utilize in our project and our club planning. So again, discussing learning kits and taking a little deeper look into that. If you don't have good internet connection, you have concerns with whether or not your families will be able to engage, learning kits are a great option. You can do checkout kits. This is especially good if these are not one-time use supplies, and then you can have them available. They get checked out, they get returned, and another family can utilize it. If they are one-time use supplies, you'll want to do individual learning kits, which again, if your project, your club provides funding for the projects, this is a good way to continue to offer that. You can also do, for project leaders, if they want to do a less intensive participation element, they can provide postcards so that the participants can let them know how they did. They can do QR code surveys, which we can help set up. Or of course, they can do phone calls and texts to check in and see how everybody did with the activity. The delivery is great. They can pick it up at a central location, or if you have a smaller group, you can drop off at each individual family home. It's great for multiple age ranges and a great option for getting families involved. We are doing something like this at the county level with the National Youth Science Day Mars Base Camp option. So these are good ideas when you don't necessarily have a project leader who can provide intensive support. Self-paced learning and lessons, again, we discussed the curriculum is a really great idea. Also the at-home, the 4-H at-home activities, which we'll discuss here in just a second. They can be mailed, you can create them, and the kids can download them. If you're using something like Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, they can download that stuff. If they order from Shop 4-H, they'll get it directly mailed to their home. There's a whole bunch of different ways to provide this, and the kids essentially work through the lessons on their own, and then we all check in together at the end to see how things went. Again, if you are worried about internet connections, if you have older teens who are able to work at their own self-pace, these are good options. Okay, so we've gone over a little bit of this, and let's say that you've decided, okay, I'm going to use XYZ virtual learning. How do you then go about building these 4-H meetings, project meetings, clubs meetings, whichever? Well, these are some easy steps to follow. Number one, determine what it is that you're planning on getting out of all of this. If it's a project, what's the goal for the end of the project? If it's the club meetings or the officer meetings, what's the goal to help get these kids at the end of each meeting? You'll want to map out the things that you need to do together synchronously and apart asynchronously, and make sure you know exactly what needs to happen and when together and apart. Make that schedule, and then this is the important part. Prepare the majority of your content before the start of the project. You don't want to have to be creating and sending out at the same time. You will fall behind, I guarantee it. So prepare as much as you can prior to the start. Make sure that you plan when you're going to need the kids to be able to be at a computer or on their phone if there are synchronous elements, and then communicate that to the kids and to the families so that they know they have to download that app prior to whatever day, that they know they have to be available for a call on X day and can't be out on vacation or out of the state or whatever, so that they know exactly what's required of them for the overall project, for the overall year, and for each individual meeting. So here are some of the resources that I highly recommend you go and check out. All of these links will be listed in the video description, and of course they're all available on the email that you got with this video link. So 4-H at Home has short activities. It's a really great option if you're looking for a one-time use, or if you're looking for specific topics and would like to get some ideas, ways that kids can work on things on their own at home. Definitely worth taking a look at. Again, this is from National 4-H, and there's a lot of topics and ideas in there. This is the California 4-H Virtual Toolbox. Highly recommend, I can't recommend enough, going through this website. It's built specifically for COVID-19 and the pandemic issues. It has information for community club leaders and how to do effective club meetings, how to make sure that you have effective Zoom meetings. It has virtual project examples and samples, ways to convert an in-person to a virtual and make it effective. Tips for following the best practices for in-person meetings, making sure you have a hand sanitizing station and that you're following social distancing. All of those things are available on this website. It is probably going to be the best thing for you to keep an eye on and go dig through. And you'll definitely want to look at least this, if not the other resources, before coming to the workshop or to an individual meeting with me. And so that you have a good idea of what's available and what are options as we begin speaking. Here are some examples of the virtual projects that have been created and are available on that website. They've done a good example from a whole bunch of different places. The two I pulled were from STEM and from animal science. And again, they're looking at a basic plan. What are we doing together? What are we doing apart? And what is the goal of this project? It's a great place to start from. And if your project leaders are really stumped, they're really kind of nervous about what they're doing, this is a great resource to send them to. And then finally, I know a lot of club leaders have been a little stressed because they're not the most comfortable with technology, which has become, of course, the main source of how we're all participating in the world today. So this website, this virtual 4-H tools resources, has a really good how-tos for the most commonly used technology that we have here in 4-H. How to set up Zoom meetings, how to set up a Microsoft Teams channel, best practices in Zoom meetings, etc. So worth taking a look if you're feeling a little like overwhelmed by the technology aspect. And again, this link will be available in the video description and in the email. So, okay, a reality check. I'm pretty sure all of you who are watching this video are having a little bit of a freak out. It sounds like a lot of work. Before I came to the University of California and working for 4-H, I was a classroom teacher for about 10 years. I have designed and taught online and hybrid coursework, and I can assure you it is a lot of work. The general rule that I give is it's about 3 times as much work as the traditional in-person meetings, simply because so much has to be planned out in advance for it to be effective. So I know this seems pretty daunting, but while it's a lot of work, I also want to remind you, you're not alone. There are a lot of people here to help, both your fellow community club leaders, your fellow project leaders, and of course, the county office. We are here to make effective 4-H programming and work together to make sure that it's valuable and worth participating in. So we absolutely have all these resources available, but if you're still a little nervous and are looking for more help, don't worry, we have lots of opportunities. We're going to be offering community club leader workshops and project leader workshops. The community club leader workshops are going to be focused on community club leader issues, so probably how to be a resource for project leaders, how to think about effective club meetings, how to think about enrollment now that we're dealing with all of this. Those types of concerns is going to be the community club leader workshops. If you have project leaders or are a project leader who's looking to get good ideas on how to convert their project, how best to approach their project this year, that's the project leader workshops. Both of these are going to be offered regularly until the end of 2020. So please do check the county website for the next upcoming version of the workshop. Sign up, participate. It's a great opportunity both to work with me and to talk to your fellow leaders to see how things are going for them and bounce ideas off each other. If those workshops are not being provided at a time that you need them, you can't make it, or if you have something more intensive that you'd like to work through, my email and phone number are on this slide. Let me know and we will schedule one-on-ones so that I can work with you. Also, if community leaders really would like to offer let's say all your project leaders, have them all work together. We can schedule a workshop just for your club and project leaders. There are a lot of options out there. I'm more than happy to work with you guys and be flexible and make sure you get what you need. So please do reach out. Any administrative help, of course, contact the county office, but reach out to me anytime. And finally, of course, I want to say thank you. Your dedication to the 4-H program is how we always have excellent programming. And in this time, that's going to be even more true. Your creativity, your flexibility, and your imagination in approaching this very bizarre 4-H year is going to be the difference between a great 4-H year and a not so great one. So we really appreciate your willingness to adapt and provide high quality program as usual to our youth. So thank you, and I hope to see you at the workshops or of course the one-on-ones, and we will all together have a great program year. Thank you.